Welcome to Tyche Books interview. We are with Krista D. Ball, author of What Kings Ate and Wizards Drank, and now, just out, Hustlers, Harlots, and Heroes, the sequel.
I have books.
Krista.
Oh, and there's a cat in the background.
And there's a cat.
I have books.
Aren't they beautiful? The Hustlers came out for Calgary Expo, but the e-version only came out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely new. So tell us about yourself and your two books, specifically your new one.
So the new one is Hustlers, Harlots, and Heroes. It's about, it's for people who love the Regency romances and like the Patrick O'Brian books of the Napoleonic era, and the Master and Commander books, and the people who like steampunk and Jack the Ripper and shows like Ripper Street. It's about the everyday life of people throughout Georgian and Victorian England, and specifically London, and what it was like to live those lives, and how to write them to be more authentic and more real and a bit more nuanced.
Interesting. So I've actually heard you describe it. It's not about Mr. Darcy, but about the people who clean his chamber pots.
It totally is. I talk about Mr. Darcy because, hey, everybody loves Mr. Darcy. It's why Jane Austen famously said he doesn't exist, and there's a reason for that, is because no man could be that perfect. He has to be written. But it's about the people who cleaned Mr. Darcy's house and who helped Miss Lizzie dress herself in the mornings, and the people who actually caused the entire Industrial Revolution in Britain to exist and happen and develop. It was by all the people who worked every single day and worked very, very hard.
Okay. So why did you decide to write this book? How did it become the natural progression from What Kings Ate? How's that?
Okay. So I did my bachelor's on British social political history from a glorious revolution to the outbreak of World War I. So this encompasses the Georgian and Victorian eras. And I love this time period. I love everything that went on. It's my favorite. So it was just a great chance to, food is my favorite, so I did that in my first book. So it was a chance to take the second book and do something else I love, which is, the Regency era, the Victorian era.
Cool. Just before we continue, if anyone has questions, feel free to type them out on YouTube, and we will ask Krista them. And I broke my train of thought doing that. So you actually, as research of the book, did a day in the life of, basically. You want to tell us how that was like?
Oh, it was horrible. It was absolutely miserable. You think about how, you spend a day cleaning the house, and it's usually horrible. This had nothing. You couldn't even touch it, how we do it today. So I started at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wore the outfit. So I wore my corset, I wore the flat shoes and the uncomfortable boots, and I didn't wear my my fancy insoles, none of that. And I wore the dress, and I got up at 5, and I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I lit my candles, which was really hard to do at 5 in the morning. I gotta say, it was quite dangerous. And I lit the fireplace, and I had to scrub the fireplace because back then you always cleaned the ovens before you started the fires. And so I did that. I filled up water. I did everything that what was called at the time a maid-of-all work, which was what poor families had. For example, Miss Bates in Jane Austen's Emma would have had a maid-of-all work. And so there's guides in the time period as to what this woman should do. And so basically from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 at night, I did not stop to get everything done that the gurus of the time said that I needed to do. And then I had to get back up in the morning, and it was horrible. I was covered in blisters, like from the scalding myself, and from the fire, and from just the work. And I had like my lips were cracked, my knuckles were cracked. Like it was just, I was done. By the second day, I didn't make it quite through the second day because I was like, this is ridiculous. No, I'm drawing the line.
So not at all how we see it on TV and movies.
Definitely, you know what, there is nothing in a Jane Austen movie adaptation that prepares you for how miserable life was for most people. And I mean, I didn't even do the hard jobs. Like, there's people at like the very, very poor, they're often children, but also sometimes elderly women, who would go down to the Thames and actually, like, wade out into that sludge and pick up garbage to sell. I did not go to the North Saskatchewan and do that. No.
And it would have been harder, like, you were researching this book in the middle of winter, so that would have made it even harder.
Yeah, no, not even. And they were going out in, like, their bare feet, rolling up their pants and their skirts and wading out to their knees. And, like, no, not even. I will do a lot for you people, but that's where I draw the line.
That's where you draw the line. The pneumonia is not.
It is so overrated.
But you didn't personally research the sex trade workers, I'm assuming.
I didn't. However, I used to work with a lot of sex workers. I used to work with homeless people at the Mustard Seed Edmonton. And so for those who have read What Kings Ate, I do talk about my role in that job. And so you get to know a lot of the sex workers for me in Edmonton. And so many of their stories haven't really changed since Jane Austen's period. Today, at least, when a 14-year-old girl is raped, she isn't necessarily forced on the streets. But what can happen is that even today, many children who are experience a lot of sexual abuse sometimes do end up on the streets, and so it's sadly that has never changed, and I think we should do better.
Okay. See, I always do. Pardon me?
I said I should warn everybody. So I have 2 trees that I'm allergic to just outside my window, and I've taken the max that I'm allowed of my allergy medicines. I can't take any more. So I'm going to be sniffling and blowing my nose sadly all day because they're literally blooming right now.
Are they? See,
yeah.
We have 2 inches of snow on the ground here.
Oh heavens! Well, we have poplar trees, and I have a Manitoba maple, and they have the. So I'm not from out here, so I never grew up with these trees, and they're horrible. So sadly, I'm going to be sniffling. So I'm not crying. I'm just.
They're tears of joy.
Yeah, they're tears of joy. Yay! It's spring.
Yay, it's spring. You wouldn't know it by here. I don't think any of my trees have started budding yet.
Yeah, it's +3 here today in Edmonton for those of you who are thinking about moving here, because I talk about it so much on Twitter. It's +3 in May.
Oh, okay. Now I have to look up and see what mine is, because this is so related to what we're talking about. It's -2 and snowing here.
See, don't move to Calgary.
Yeah, for a change, you guys are warmer. Usually it's the other way around. Okay, back to the book.
Back to the book.
Back to the book.
And I do talk about in the book how cold it could be in some of those houses because they didn't have insulation or windows or blankets or really anything.
Yeah, well, they would do bed warmers, which I see as a fire hazard. But anyway, it's
really weird. Like you go and heat up basically like a piece of iron or metal or stones if you were poor and stick them in your bed or bricks. Like that just seems like a hazard. Burning your feet because you get hot because you touch them in the middle of the night. And I know that they're rolled in towels, but still, you could burn yourself on hot water on a hot water bottle for heaven's sakes. I mean, can you imagine this like hot piece of iron in your bed.
Yeah.
Ugh.
One advantage from what I've seen is Britain doesn't get quite as cold as in Edmonton.
No, it doesn't. Definitely people who have lived in this place for thousands of years do have a bit of a different system for keeping oneself warm before electricity. It's kind of funny because many of the settlers who came over here were like, they came from places like Britain, and they're like, what is this place? What, all the stuff that they didn't work here because it was cold.
No, but it's dry cold.
Yeah, that's just...
I'm kidding.
That's nonsense.
Cold. I know, cold is cold.
There comes a point when it's just cold.
Yeah. So let us talk about, you also discussed the slave trade and emancipation and all these other hot button items.
Yeah, I do. Well,
don't get too deep because we want people to read your book.
Well, it's one of these interesting things where people seem to... I've read so many books set in 1795 to 1810, and it seems like nobody even knows that a slave trade existed in these books. It's like they just gloss over it completely, try to avoid it altogether. And a lot of people don't quite understand how, when the slave trade ended in Britain, they just assume it was an automatic boom, it stopped and that's it. And it wasn't. It was a progression and a series of many laws. And so I wanted to talk about that in particular and how that would have impacted anybody who's writing, even into early Victorian steampunk, how that could affect anybody who's like doing recruiting for militaries, or, you know, if you're going to go like the airship way, how if you're going from port to port and from country to country, how that would impact you. And also, I saw a GIF once that it's this guy. These people were like, "Hey, we're going to cosplay Sherlock," but they say to their black friend, "But so you need to come up with your own costume," and he goes, "What? Black people weren't? Why not? Like, this is Victorian England." They're like, "Yeah, but it's Victorian England." He goes, "What? Black people weren't invented yet?" And I think it's from a show, but I've never been able to figure out where it's from. So if anybody knows, please tell me. And that's really how a lot of people have approached this era in their writing. Everybody's white. Like, literally, everybody is white. Britain did not have a worldwide empire. Britain did not invade and conquer India. Britain didn't have slave ships. I mean, it's amazing how suddenly none of these people exist, it seems, in these books. And so I actually have a full section on how to be authentic in your writing. And I quote from people from the period. So I don't just randomly come up with stuff. Like, I actually pull from the period and say, these are people who worked, and all the different types of people who worked and the jobs they held. And I think that I think that we have a responsibility to be a little bit more authentic in our writing.
So I just did a quick search and I found it on Pinterest, what you were looking for, but
fabulous! See,
I don't see exactly what it's from. It's just someone pinned it.
Yeah, it's a great thing. I see it fairly often in on some sites where people are like, "Oh no, we can't write about black people in Jane Austen's time because none of them lived in Britain," which is a complete lie. But then a lot of people bring up that one and say, and it has a guy saying, "Oh yes, because black people weren't invented yet," and so it's a bit of a joke on a rather really serious thing about how many writers seem to forget that there was a significantly more diverse population than we seem to think. So I wrote an entire chapter on it.
Well, yeah, and there wasn't just black people. There were all of them. There were Asians. There were...
Oh, from all over the world. Yeah. And especially with colonialization, really did end up bringing a whole lot of people to a lot of different areas. I mean, not necessarily in the most positive ways, that's for sure. No. But some people did travel too, and some people did want adventure and hired onto ships as servants and traveled the world that way. And so it can't be underestimated, the diversity.
So, what to ask next? See, I do all these interviews, and I'm a terrible interviewer because I never know what to say.
See, whereas I can seriously, I can just talk for like hours at a time.
Have at it. It's only been 15 minutes. Have at it.
If we get stuck, we can interview the cat. And at my feet, you can't see her. At my feet is a spaniel. So
my cat finally got tired of howling at me, so she left.
I had to move my corgi because my corgi, every time I was testing the mic, my corgi kept barking. And then when he'd hear you speak, he'd bark, and I was like, okay, that's it. We're going to have like an hour of him in the background going, woof, woof. But yeah, about the book, it's so a lot of people have been asking if is this officially a series? Is this officially a series? Yes, it's officially a series.
Do you want to say anything about the next book, or do you want to just let that be?
Nope, not saying anything about the next book.
Okay. But
fine. That answers a lot of the people's questions. Yes. Yes, sadly, there will be another book. I will put myself through this again. I haven't decided what tortures I will endure. I have a few possibilities already. And I have a large group of people who are willing to actually help me, which is both awesome and absolutely terrifying when I... when I consider what it involves.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, how can you do this yourself? Because I sort of know what you were talking about too. But
yes.
It's not something you can do on your own. Like, unlike What Kings Ate, where you did most of the recipes, or this one where you did a day in the life. It's.
I will say that picture me and 50 of my closest friends dressed in chainmail rushing a hill. That's what
now, saying that though, having said that though, you have to remember that picturing a female dressed as chainmail is not the same as what you're really thinking.
Well, I see. I've done some live action role playing, so LARP, and so I mean, we all. It's kind of funny because the girls in chainmail, it's really, other than the hair and the tone of our voices, you really can't tell us apart because we all look the same. But the people who play like the wood elves and like the dark elves and the barbarians, often they look differently. They're usually like in the skimpy clothes and the leathers and the more the fantasy breastplates. Whereas us in the armored troops, we just look like blobs of metal.
Blobs of heavy metal.
I'll post it at the end of this. I usually I post it online every so often. A picture of me in chainmail. Of course, you can't see it because you can see the snow on the ground, and it ended up going down to, I think, like -25 that weekend. So, like, I look massive. Like, seriously, I look like 275 pounds because I'm wearing I'm wearing a tunic, a padded jacket underneath so I didn't get bruised, chainmail, a sweater over it, and a fur coat over it. And seriously, like, and you see, like, my head, and, like, I'm like out here. In fact, I don't even think my covers how wide I looked, and it's like I look quite toasty, but it's like if you just kind of like shaded out my face, you wouldn't know what gender it was. So that so yes, the third book is on LARPing and live action role playing. No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, I know. Actually, we have B. Connors seems quite happy that it's a series.
Yes, people, it's going to be a series. Don't expect a book next year. I jokingly say I'm booked till 2020. I will have a book sooner than that, but I'd like to take my time with this one, and so we'll see. And when I'm comfortable announcing it, I will.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We won't get right into it.
Yeah, I have 2 unannounced books. See, it's killing me. It's like I'm keeping secrets.
Do I know the second one? Is that the one I think it is? Maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have 2. Yeah, I know.
I can't say anything, but Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, guys, I can't tell you.
Okay.
And I'm only drinking water today. See, it's only water. So.
You have a straw? I went with a water bottle. Fancy.
Yes, I know. It's the life of a writer. Life of a writer.
That's right. You're trying to make up for that terrible day you had.
Exactly.
Okay, going back to the book, because we love to segue here.
That's okay. Reasons. That's the whole point of doing an hour-long chat.
That's true. It's not, and also I want it to be scripted. That's part of the thing.
Oh, that's just boring. I mean, besides, I would never follow it anyways.
The other thing you have in the book is you have these spotlights. You'll choose a person and you'll spotlight them. Where did that come up? Because that wasn't in What Kings Ate.
No, it wasn't, and it wouldn't have worked in What Kings Ate. I think that if I had done it in the first book, it didn't occur to me in the first book because it wasn't a natural thing, right? Because it would have just seemed, I don't know, forced. Whereas in this book, there's some really key figures that people don't know about, and it was easier to do. So let me grab the book. Oh. You'll notice there's taggy things. This is for when I get stuck. When I give talks, I can just open up the book. It's like if I think it's not going anywhere, I just open up the book, and I don't think you can see them, but they actually say things. So one of them says like fast food, recipes, breakfast, white soup, prisons, soup kitchen. So that way, if I freeze, I can look at the tab, flip it open, and just start. One of the great things about writing a book in the way that I talk is that I can just wing anything now from the book, because it sounds like me. But we have things like this. So can we see that? Oh, we can see that. Look at that.
See that?
So the idea was that there's people that we don't often know about. And so, like Isabella Beaton, for example, she was like Nigella Larson. Is that her name? Larson?
Which means nothing because I know more about Beaton than Nigella.
She's the Jamie Oliver of Britain.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So she's the Jamie Oliver of the Victorian times, and she was the domestic goddess, so a bit Martha Stewart-y. And she had written all of these books, and a lot of people actually thought that she was like this, 60-year-old woman who had all this experience. This year, she was like 21, and she died really young. And they kept going with books in her name because they didn't want people to think that she had died, since she had died in childbirth.
But she was 29?
I think when she died, so like she didn't make 30.
Yeah, I think it's 29. I've got the e-version up in front of me. It says 1836 to 1865, so that would make her about 29, I think.
And this is one of my favorite ones. So, there we go. So Mary Lacy. And so, like, Mary, nobody knows who Mary Lacy is. Where she dressed up as a guy, called herself William Chandler, and went and joined the Navy. And she wrote a book about how she successfully did this. And she got, like, a pension in her own name, and they knew she was a woman because she got a pension in the name of Mary Lacy, saying, "Hey, I was actually William Chandler all those years." And they're like, "Okay, cool, here's your pension because you served." And there were several stories like that, and we don't actually hear about any of those people. And I wanted to spotlight those people, as opposed to just doing a little sidebar, which I've done some. But for some of these people, I thought that it was really cool if we actually had a full page on them. Plus, the artwork is a great excuse to have more artwork in the book. And I absolutely love the artwork. So Stefan, who did them for What Kings Ate, he's back again. And he does even more this time. And so I think I might actually have to think about what he's going to do for the third one. Because it's great. His artwork really works well with kind of my vision for what the feel, because I don't want super serious stuff. Definitely the books they're kind of goofy at times. And so I want to have a little bit of the goofy art that goes with it. So it's a great excuse to get him.
Mary Lacy reminds me a bit of Mary Read, who was a pirate. And,
Oh yes, yes, yes.
And she was a man for all intents and purposes too.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when you think about the fact that these were women who wanted to go and do other things, and they went and did them. And sure, there weren't a lot of women, but I think there was a lot more than we like to like that we pretend that there are. And think about it. She pretended to be a woman on ships. She was like flogged a couple of times. I think Mary was. It was Mary or the other one. I can't remember now. But she's like, they got whipped for heaven's sakes. And for people who don't know how that works, is that they strip your shirt off. Yeah. And like in both cases, like one time they let her keep a scarf on that was big enough to drape over her chest. Come on, these people knew she was a girl. Yes. Like, they never let people wear a scarf, and suddenly she's wearing a scarf. And then another time they whipped her by letting her lean against one of the gates where there was not people on the other side. Again, right? And she jokes and says in her autobiography that the best way to get away with it is just to find an older guy who isn't a drunk, and tell him, and he will protect you. Yeah. That is so fabulous. I need someone to go and write this book for me right now. Go and write this book and let me know about it.
As opposed to you writing it yourself.
Oh, heavens. Who has time for that? I got a third book to write. Who has time?
And a fourth. A secret fourth.
Oh, heavens, yes. See, I can't give any of you guys a tour, because normally I would pick up the camera and I'd give you a tour, but I can't, because there's, like, right to the side right here is a giant whiteboard of what is planned for 2 books, and you guys don't know about the 2 books. I can't show you. So all I can show you is on this side is some shelves. Behind me is shelves and a cat. So yeah.
No, the cat left.
Oh, she did. Look how she got in the huff and left. I still have a spaniel underneath my feet.
So tell me a bit about your research process. Besides, the day in the life of. And
that was horrible. Like, seriously, I might need therapy to recover from that. That was horrible. So it was different this time around. With What Kings Ate, I knew specific time periods and specific recipes and specific, that's a hard word to say, books. And so, but I had to expand out. And so for some of it, I didn't know where to go. And so it took a little bit. For Hustlers, Harlots, and Heroes, I mean, I had 5 years of studying this in school. So when I wrote my outline, I knew exactly who was going to be in it. Like, right from the start. I knew what books I was going to consult. I knew all of that. And I knew what approach I was going to give. But then I had to remember some of the things. And, like, I still have, like, old papers, because I used to, there's a section on the Contagious Diseases Act. I used to do a lot of papers, and I used to give talks on that. And so I had to, like, haul all that stuff out, and wow, was I ever pretentious when I was 20. And I had to read them, and I had to find all those books. And so I actually spent a good amount of time trying to find the sources that I knew I needed. And then, of course, because I love this time period, I ended up reading way too much. And reading everybody's point of view, and reading, because then you'd read the one point of view, and then, of course, I'd have to go find the arguing point of view who disagreed with all of that and go read them, because that's how I run. And so I ended up with endless reading. There's a picture, I'll post it on Twitter later, of my desk during, like, the middle of it, where, like, I have my computer monitor on top of my computer box, and it's playing a video game. And then I have my laptop in front of me, which has work on it, and my desk is quite literally covered. You can't see my desk. And there's about a foot mound of books, and half of them are open, and there's papers everywhere, and there's, like, handwritten notes, and, like, that really was what my life was like for a year. A full year, that's what my life looked like.
So most of your research, or well, I won't say most, but a good portion is actual book form as opposed to electronic?
A lot of the books I have I actually have to order them in because they're hard to get. And then some books are rare books, and they haven't been digitized yet, so I have to order them in and go into a special room at the library downtown to be able to go read them. But generally now, one of the great things, and for that Google over the last, I think, 6 years has been giving grants to various organizations for them to pay for students to scan rare books, and it is a great way, because some of these books we no longer can have access to. There's like 5 of them in the world. No one is going to have those shipped anywhere. You are going to have to travel to those locations, be escorted in with gloves and a mask on to be allowed to look at them. Now we can digitize them, so that way we can all access them. And that has been absolutely great, because I was able then to actually read the original manuscripts as opposed to reading someone else's interpretations of them, because someone else's viewpoint on them is not mine.
No, that's true.
And a guy who's 60 years old in 1970 is going to have a very different perspective on someone like Mary Lacy, who dresses up as a man, than me as a woman at my age in this time period. So it's really important to be able to read as many primary sources as possible.
Okay. Be asked to see the whiteboard, but I told her anticipation makes everything better.
Yeah, you ain't seen the whiteboard. Nice try, nice try. Here, I can show you a white piece of paper. There we go. There's nothing on it. Oh, on the other part there's notes. Oh, look, there's notes.
Almost.
Almost, actually, that wasn't even intentioned. I just saw a white piece of paper.
Okay, where are we at here? Yeah, we've done half an hour already.
Yay!
So, we should talk about, let me pull up the book here. So you do get into food a little bit.
I do. I had to.
You had to. And then you discuss various how charity works.
Yeah. Charity is really interesting. Like, I just love the charity of this period, because they believe in many people believed in predestination, predetermination, where you were born good, you were born bad, you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to heaven. Everybody knows this, so why bother? Which is an odd way to look at society, but so many people did believe that. But then charity, in particular, in this time period for Christianity, was like a major thing. It wasn't like in medieval times where people really did believe that if you turned away a stranger, you could in fact be turning away Jesus himself or an angel. They weren't quite on that level of during the Georgian and Victorian times, but they still believed that they had a responsibility, and so they people like, I believe it might have been Eliza Acton or Mrs. Rundle, I can't remember which now, who did really in their cookbook say you need to look after the poor. But how they said to look after the poor was actually it was about not putting yourself out and not having any cost to yourself. So one of the famous ones, which by the way is actually not that bad, it's oh, we have a kitty. The kitty's back. The kitty is back, people. The kitty is back. So,
important breaking news.
Wait, no, the kitty is back. Hold on.
I see her.
There she goes. That's Twinkie for everybody who follows me on Twitter. So, she might start screaming at any moment. So what is that there's this thing called salt beef, which is salt cured beef, and so you have to boil it in order to eat it, and it kind of gives off this salty, greasy sort of broth. It's called liquor at the time, but this broth, and it makes great soup. But when it was done cooking, and it takes a few hours, what you would do then is drop in a loaf of bread. And like if you think about it, so don't think about like a grocery store loaf of bread, but think like Cobb's, like crusty bread. And so if you drop like a loaf in, it's going to soak it up, but it's not going to fall apart. So you soak that in for like 15 minutes, and then you give the bread to the poor, not the meat.
No, of course not.
because they believed that the poor couldn't handle the meat, which I know is silly. But at the same time, for people who don't eat very much meat, and then, like, for example,
Yeah.
if you have vegetarians who have been, like, not eating meat for a long time, they kind of have, like, a fall off the wagon day where they go and eat, like, 3 Big Macs and a steak. I've had a few friends who did that.
I can't even have 3 Big Macs.
Yeah, okay, so I have one vegetarian friend, I think of her. So she was a vegetarian for years, and she was vegan most of the time, and she just had like a bad week. Like she had a couple of deaths in her family. She didn't get into the university she wanted, and she just fell off the wagon hard. And so she went to McDonald's. Like she ate one of everything, I swear, there, and she had a steak, and like that's all she ate for like 2 days, and she was so sick. Like she was so sick, and she's like, I can't do this. And so while it's silly to think that poor people couldn't handle it, many people who weren't used to eating meat, it would have been a lot to get them to digest, a pound of salt beef, because even people who aren't used to that today have a hard time with that. So, but definitely giving bread soaked in fatty, salty water is really not something that we think is appropriate today.
So B is also asking, other than the non-invention of black people, what would you say is a biggest misconception of that time period?
Women didn't work. Like if anybody gets one thing out of this book, it's that women worked. Women worked. So we'll even set aside because everybody worked. I don't care how rich you were, you still worked. It was just in a different way. But let's look at women didn't get paid labor. That's a load of bull. It's been 37 minutes and I haven't sworn yet.
Right. Just so people are warned, I'm not going to bleep it out if it happens.
That's why I'm trying really hard. It's bull. Women worked. The majority of Britain during this time is middle class to poor. William Booth, who was a social campaigner at the time, said that a third of Britain was living in poverty, below the poverty line. And that is not our poverty line, that's their version of the poverty line, which is an important distinction. Like when they think they're poor, they're poor. Those women worked. They had to. That's why wet nurses existed. It wasn't, yes, many rich women did not want to breastfeed their children for various reasons. Generally, it was for birth control. They had to produce another child, especially if it was the first boy, or if they had given a girl. So many of them couldn't breastfeed themselves because that meant that it decreased their likelihood of getting pregnant. But for poor women, many of them hired wet nurses because they still had to work. And so I give like examples where one woman gave like 75% of her income to a wet nurse to look after her child, but this wet nurse would have also had a couple of other babies with her to help look after, to help pay for her life. Whereas the woman who was able to send her kid to daycare basically had the opportunity then to at least earn a bit more than what she had before, and to have someone look after her kid. And so many women worked, and the factories became the busier time, obviously, but then women were servants. Like I don't know why people keep thinking that women didn't work. All these women were servants. I mean, everybody knows this.
Yes.
But with some reason that they seem invisible, and they weren't, and I don't want them to be.
So you also go a tiny bit into some of the inventions of the time.
Yes. I hate the cotton gin. I hate it so much.
Why do you hate the cotton?
Because when you take British history, every single course talks about the cotton gin. And seriously, if I never hear the name Eli Whitney again, and I rant about this in the book, and it's like, I am being forced, I think in one chapter, it's like, I'm being forced to talk about the cotton gin, because I have to talk about the cotton gin, because this is what caused so this is a thing that helped speed up the production of cotton. And And you would think then that would make things better, but in fact it made things so much worse because it created a higher demand for the cotton, which then fed into slavery, especially in the Americas, and so that so then the cotton prices decreased, which meant that more people wanted cotton, which then decreased the prices further. So to keep the prices low, they had to have more slaves, and it just became this vicious cycle. And I mean, it's just cotton, like it's cotton. So it's one of the, and every single course you take that has on Britain industrialization, Britain in the modern world, Britain emerges into the modern world, Britain in the factory world, you have to do the cotton gin, and it's like 3 weeks. I hate the cotton gin. But also things like the railway and things like that, and the canals. A lot, I think everybody knows about the railway. Yay, the railway. But a lot of people didn't know about the canal system, and that was just as important to industrialization, and also the increase in, I don't know, the everyday lifestyle of average Britons, because the canal system allowed things like coal to be dragged throughout the countryside in these canals, and instead of having horse and carriages dragging them, you could have one horse that would tug along these boats in the canals, and the horses would be on the like a trail next to it, and the horse then could just help the boat along, so you wouldn't have to have locomotion even, and they could drag so much more than if you had those poor horses actually hauling coal. They couldn't have done it, and so it ended up that coal and minerals and stuff were the big deal. You also ended up with like fresh produce, fish, and those types of things.
Yes. Just making yourself comfortable.
Yes, this is her spot. You can tell because the chair dips.
Yeah.
Also, so I talked about ice in What Kings 8 and how, you know, ice existed. Ice was invented, people, and and how ice changed things. And I talk a bit about more about ice and hustlers, because an American inventor was able to figure out how to make railway cars that could contain the ice. And once they did that, the railway cars were then cold, like freezer chambers, and so then you can transport things like fish and dairy everywhere and not have to worry about them spoiling, which before it wasn't happening. Yeah.
And you also talk about health, or as it's called, cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah, definitely. This is the era where they discovered germs.
Yes.
And I mean, I feel bad for these people. Just think about it. So you never realized, you always thought it was like something you ate, the imbalance in your body, right? And all of a sudden, you discover that it is little tiny creatures who live inside your body. And you get it from dirt.
Yes.
I mean, they went a little OCD, but I can't blame them. Like, I think I would have freaked. And so they had like these soaps back then that had like this horrible smell. And like my mom remembers these soaps still because, and she's like, they burned your skin, and it like you'd have to like coat yourself in lotion afterwards because like they dried you out so bad. And they had this they almost, you know how hospitals always have that smell?
Yes.
It's like that smell, like amplified. And she said that's how you smell. And people loved it because it meant you were clean. And you were going to like drag diseases around. Just, like, today, if you smell like this, everyone's like, are you okay?
Exactly.
What is on you? But they definitely went through this horror-stricken phase. And you know what? I'm cool with that. Like, I totally would have like freaked too. You mean to tell me there's bugs living on me? There's bugs living on my body right now.
And in you. They're in you too.
Oh, I know. No wonder they took so much. You know, they drank everything for medication. No wonder.
Yeah. Right.
Because they knew the germs existed, and they didn't have antibiotics yet, and so they had like bacteria. There's bacteria, and we can't do anything about it. Oh. Ugh. I'm surprised there wasn't mass panic.
There might have been in some sectors.
There was, some people did have mass panic, definitely.
So why don't we talk about the tea next weekend, next Saturday?
Yes.
At 3 in Calgary. If you're in Calgary.
It better not be snowing.
I hope so too, but it's still snowing here. I look outside and it's still snowing.
Like seriously, it better not be snowing. No, it's next weekend at 3 o'clock. 3, right?
Yeah, 3.
Yeah, okay. It's next weekend at 3 o'clock, and myself and Christopher Hoare, who wrote Steam and Stratagem, go buy his book. It is fabulous. I'm serious. It's great. I love it. We're actually going to be having an afternoon tea. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be telling stories. I might comb my hair.
Wow, you're just going to go all out for this.
Yeah, I might actually comb my hair for it.
And it's free and open to anybody. So if you're in Calgary, it's at the Hillhurst Sunnyside Community Association. You can check it out on our Facebook page if you're not sure. But yeah, 3 o'clock, 1 week from today.
There's another cat.
Yes, I see her.
That's Worf, for those who have heard about Worf. He's camera shy. Twinkie Whereas just couldn't care less.
Just let me have my seat and leave me alone.
Yeah, this is where she sleeps, literally, like, all the time. This is her spot. But yeah, no, come out next weekend if you can. There's going to be a steampunk event kind of going on at the same time, so if you're a costumey person, please dress up. And come and have some fun. Ask me questions, I love it, so. Ask me about the cotton gin, I'll rant for 2 hours.
Oh, I see Margaret's posted what the temperature is expected to be.
And?
Next week. 60 degrees. She's done it in the U.S.
What is 60 degrees? I have no idea what that is. Like, 60 degrees for me means that, I can't go outside and I need to buy an air conditioner and that I'm going to die.
10, 12, right in there.
So,
spring.
Yeah, May. In Alberta.
Yeah. And there's going to be parasol dueling, apparently.
What is that? Is it like you actually like beat each other up like with parasols?
Sure.
That is
if I can get
neat.
my camera to show it here.
Okay, because seriously, I need to participate in something like this if I get to hit people.
Okay, just a minute here. Let me see if I can click on the picture here, and then I'll picture, and then I'll switch to the camera.
So, it's like lightsabers with umbrellas.
Yeah.
Huh. Am I allowed to hit people?
I don't know. I've never actually seen it. But there you go.
I might have to participate in this.
Yeah. And I know I did this wrong. For those of you into Google, I know that you could switch the picture straight to it, but I didn't want to play with it.
That's okay.
Because I know I'll get people, there's a way you can just...
Yeah, you know there is a way, but nah.
Okay, I have no idea what this means. Bob Lyle said, "Remember, a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury."
Yes. Okay, so it's probably my favorite phrase from the entire book.
Oh.
So it's from the chapter of prostitution. And so there is a phrase from the period. It's called, "Remember, one night with Venus is a lifetime with Mercury." And so what it was saying is that they often refer to sex workers as Venus, whatever. And so they would often refer to being with Venus as getting a prostitute. However, since venereal disease was rampant during this period, and they didn't distinguish between the various venereal diseases, they just thought there was syphilis. And not realizing, of course, there was syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and lots of itchy things. And so it was all syphilis. And so they would treat syphilis, gonorrhea or whatever, with mercury, mercury.
Well, a lot of things were treated with mercury back then.
They used to rub it on themselves, and so so you either drank it or you rubbed it on your underwear. ugh. And so and so they would actually use so much of it that it would turn their tongues black, and that was how you knew that it was working. It's just that turning your tongue black is a sign of mercury poisoning.
Yes.
It did cure syphilis. It's just...
But, you know, it died a different way, that's all.
Yeah. And then you still got it again. So, yeah, so that's where that phrase come from. Seriously, like, it has to be my most favorite phrase ever because it is such a great phrase. And so, yeah, I definitely talk about that more in the prostitution chapter.
Yes. So if people want to stalk you, where would they go?
Oh, Twitter. Literally, I live on Twitter. The reason why I don't write many books is because I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm angling in on 40,000 tweets, and I think I just might make it like a full-fledged effort to get there like by the end of the month. So.
Well, you've still got 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. Like it's
almost 4.
Yeah, I might be able to do it. I could just like live tweet something. Last time it was Dirty Dancing. Maybe I can like live tweet I don't know, Pride and Prejudice.
You should have live tweeted this interview.
I can't do both. I can't do both. I can't talk and tweet at the same time.
Well, we just have to work on your multitasking skills.
Exactly. There's some things I can do. Talk and tweet, I can't. So yeah, definitely Twitter. I'm Krista D B1, and I'm on Facebook as well. So if you look for Krista D Ball on Facebook, I'm there, and I have a website, kristadball.com. I don't blog the way I used to. Now I just do articles about, like, people ask me to write articles on things like what do people get wrong about homelessness in books, and I do articles like that now. So that's more of my, I answer questions for people now. And this week and the next week I'm going to be on a lot of different websites talking about the book and doing interviews and stuff. So
and we'll try to post as many as we can on the Tyche Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll try to remember to tag you guys, because I'm horrible at tagging people. I was like, someone should know about this. Who should need to know? And I kind of forget the most obvious people.
Yeah, just your publisher.
Yeah, you know, don't feel bad. I've talked about people and I've been talking about them and forgot to actually tag them. I sometimes forget these things.
Well, we're coming up on the hour mark already.
Yeah.
So we will wrap it up. So do you have any closing remarks before you sniff yourself away here?
Yeah, when this is done, I'm definitely going to be like blowing my nose for like 5 minutes. I think that the What Kings Ate is funny, and I think that it's funny. There's no way around it. Hustlers isn't funny the same way, but it definitely edges into the snarky. So for those of you who appreciate my snark, you'll find lots of fun in Hustlers. And I think that if you're, especially people who love Regency romance, like me, Regency romance lovers are just going to have a kick out of this book, because I talk about what we often think of as the myth of, like, you know, the Duke marries his prostitute. This is real. This happened, and so I talk about that. And so anyone who's a fan of Regency romances or the Napoleonic Wars, you're gonna have a blast with this book.
Okay.
Buy the book.
Yes, buy the book.
Yay!
Available wherever books are sold online, both in e and print format. Next one, we might have an interview in June. I just haven't lined up with whom yet, so stay tuned. And thank you very much, Krista, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody.